Ken Gullicksen is COO of Evernote. I'm going to do a little bit of a talk with him up here on stage. Ken, you want to come on up and we'll grab a seat? Yay! Thanks. And for folks who would like to ask burning questions, feel free. We'll try and take some of those during the conversation. So Ken, not to cast too many aspersions, but you invested in Evernote when it was really unsexy. I don't know if you want to take that as a badge of courage or not, but could you tell us a little bit about why and how you got started with Evernote and what was attractive about the company?
Yeah, so I think that's totally a badge of honor because unsexy is this investor-centric perception of the world, basically, where that means you don't think something's going to be successful when you say it's unsexy. So as an investor, when you invest in something like that, then it turns out to be successful, that's a big badge of honor. So that's what you should be doing with 500 startups.
I think we are trying to do that.
Thank
you
good.
for the plug.
Yeah. So that's kind of my perspective on that term. But so I was a venture investor for 10 years before investing in Evernote. And what got me really attracted to it was just an absolutely fanatical, passionate user base from almost the day it launched. And also a very nice growth rate from early on. And what really prevented the world from seeing it and seeing the opportunity was just this bias that that there hasn't been anything interesting in productivity in the 20 years before that. So it was really a category bias by the venture community that blinded them to seeing the opportunity. And what I saw was a very passionate user base and amazing growth without any of that great stuff that our SlideShare person talked about. Just pure word of mouth recommendations was driving great growth. And that, in fact, is still true today. I said, wow, there's something here. I don't know what it is, but let's just do that.
What kind of, when you invested, what were the sort of basic metrics for the company and how big were they?
So it's been on an exponential growth curve of a little bit more than 2x per year, basically from the beginning. So it's a very boring, smooth curve. It looks like a hockey stick, but it's just an optical illusion.
A very boring hockey stick.
Very boring hockey stick. It's about 65 million users today. When I invested, it was a few hundred thousand. But the curve shape at a few hundred thousand looked basically the same as it does today at 65 million.
And I guess one question is, what do you think was so amazing that started that community? Was that something about the product, something about the way it was being marketed, combination of both? What drove that sort of fanatic user
it
base?
certainly wasn't the marketing pitch, or certainly not the investor pitch, because there were and are a gazillion free note-taking apps. Every manufacturer of everything ever known to man has come with a free app that does some flavor of a little bit of what Evernote does. So it's really the vision of Evernote was a lot more ambitious and there's a lot more to it. We want to be your second brain. We don't want to just be a little thing on your phone.
I'd be happy with the first brain, actually, really.
Well, yeah, that's why you need a second one. Yes, everybody needs a second brain. It's a universal need all over the world, and that's one of the things that's really helped us.
When was the time frame you did the investment again?
2009. So the beta launch was 2008. Right. I'd say the other factor that was really just a matter of luck and timing, and you always need that too. You can't just be smart. Was the iPhone App Store opened up in the summer of 2008, and at the time, most people were taking a wait-and-see attitude. There weren't really very many apps at all on the iPhone when it first launched, and of the few that were there, most of them were not really very good. So Evernote just bet on that and said, we really believe in that platform, put the entire company behind making the world's best version of Evernote for the iPhone. And as a result, people got their shiny new phone and said, well, I don't know what to do with it, but hey, let me try this Evernote thing because that looks pretty cool. And that early kind of advantage and early starting point on an important platform like that is something that's that has persisted all the way to today, and the advantage that it gives us.
So some benefits from being early on an early platform.
Yeah, and that's something that we've continued with we've done it with Windows 8. We were big believers in Windows 8 and really heavily supported that. Not very many people did. Microsoft probably would like more. But we've done that with a number of platforms, and we think that's That's really a very strong strategy.
And what's, I guess the reason I was asking the timing question was just to understand the investment climate around then. And in 2009, we were still kind of
Yeah, the
coming
world
out
ended in the fall of 2008, and kind of investment, basically anything that didn't look safe was really hard to get any investment at all in 2009. The climate was pretty bad across the board. Venture guys weren't sure if they were ever going to raise another fund. Some of them haven't.
Yeah, the RIP Good Times had come
Yeah,
out, I guess,
Sequoia's
summer,
famous
fall.
RIP of Good
Right.
Times was out. So it was a tough environment. But the reality is that's, if you're a small company and you have something great, it isn't the overall environment that matters because you're tiny. You don't need massive macroeconomic growth. You just need something really great, and you can grow.
And so you're mentioning like the initial sort of strength of adoption was happening on the iOS platform and rollout there. Do you guys have similar visibility on other mobile platforms and on non-mobile platforms, or is it really still being driven by iOS app-driven?
Well, it's an interesting pattern for us because we're multi-platform, and the people that stick with Evernote and use it, it kind of takes over your life, and you have it on every platform. So if you have a PC, it's on your PC. Whatever platform you have, it's there. But in terms of our growth, where the growth actually comes from is mobile app stores, and that's predominantly these days is iOS and Android. They're about evenly split for us. Partially because the attach rate on iPads is much higher than it is on phones. That keeps iOS and Android at about the same level for us. But what happens is, some percentage of those users just don't stick mainly because they don't find a use case. They think, well, this is cool, but what do I use it for? But the ones that do stick then put it everywhere. But very few of them actually start from the desktop and then go to mobile.
And I guess another interesting piece of the Evernote story was also you guys have had pretty substantial growth internationally in a few geographies that people might not have guessed would be beneficial initially.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of conventional wisdom there about international stuff that's probably wrong. I mean, we're a bit over 70% of our users are outside the U.S. The U.S. is still the top country for us, but it's definitely the smaller part. And I think generally what we found is because we're relying on mobile app stores, and those are pretty much universal, you'll get some level of adoption everywhere in the world. And what we found very early is once you see that there's some adoption and there's some interest, if you pay a little bit of attention to it and you do translation and you get to meet people locally who can help you with business development and other things, you can considerably accelerate your growth rate in the countries where you've already seen adoption just as a pure English language product. And that's a strategy we've followed all around the world. We have 8 offices now outside the U.S. The first big one was Japan, actually. That's still the second largest market for Evernote, even though China is growing faster these days. And what we found is the appeal of Evernote itself is universal. Everybody needs a second brain. It isn't a culturally contextual kind of a product, so we have a lot of advantage from that. But the way that people learn about things, the way that they get promoted, the way that they work with other products, there's a lot of nuances in different countries around the world.
And I guess I guess I've had some familiar with Japan. Wife's there, and we have a lot of investors and founders over there as well. But that might be an unusual choice for the first non-U.S. market to be going after.
Yeah, that's right.
What's kind of your roadmap in terms of priority for, say, top 5 to 10 countries or language geographies?
Well, I'd say in the last year, the ones that have really, really taken off in a big way, and I think it's just because the smartphones are taking off in those countries, are Mexico, Brazil, India, and China. And probably before that, Korea, if you ask going back another year before that, I'd say Korea is the one that really took off for us and is now proportionately about as successful as Japan is.
Great. Allow me to brag a little bit and say you just named the countries where we've hired country managers, so that actually is awesome for us.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, they should come hang out in our offices in those countries.
That would be really cool. We could use an extra office space, not on our payroll. I think the reason I'm kind of bringing that up is I think the plan
Again, but yet, in Japan,
There you go. Packaged software.
one of the major distribution channels for Evernote, you actually get this in a box. They still have boxes in Japan. It's crazy. And not only do they have boxes, but they have flaps on the boxes with really small type and all kinds of words on them. This would never work in an Apple store. Like, it has way too much stuff. But in Japan, this totally works. And Nori over here is our Japanese distributor, actually, for selling this in a box. And we literally, a major fraction of our sales in Japan are from boxes. So you find weird things when you leave the country.
What's inside the box?
What's inside the box is actually totally empty. It has a code and a little piece of paper that says go to evernote.com. It's the weirdest thing ever. But it totally works. I mean, this guy actually makes his whole business on this over here, and it's he's doing well. He drives a really nice car too.
I'm trying to make a joke. There's this old like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck commercial about winning $1 million bucks, and inside there's a dollar bill. Anyway, whatever.
It was worth it.
Some days you're on, some days you're not on. So I again,
as a gift here.
Thank you so much. I will treasure it always.
Yeah.
But yeah, so where it used to be that Western Europe meant a somewhat significant percentage of sales, maybe East Asia less so, and then the rest of the world didn't matter. Now you're saying the U.S. is maybe 30% of sales, and Western Europe isn't necessarily the first place to go. Japan was, which previously used to have a whole bunch of double-wide character set, another bunch of translation issues. Wouldn't necessarily have been the first market to go after for a lot of folks, but it is a very high spend per customer, almost 100% online audience.
Yeah, there's a lot of nerds in Japan.
A lot of nerds in Japan.
Japan is a very nerdy country.
I believe that term is otaku in Japan, actually, for nerds or geeks. And then you also mentioned, several other countries. Obviously Latin America is a huge area for mobile adoption and growth. Brazil and Mexico.
Brazil's the one people always talk about. I don't know. I think it's because some dude at Goldman invented this term called BRIC, which is Brazil, Russia, India, and China. So that's the one people talk about, which kind of a weird influence. But the fact is, Mexico is for us is about dead even with Brazil. They're essentially equivalent as markets.
And when you're saying Mexico, are you meaning exclusively Mexico or Spanish-speaking Latin America as well? Or
great stuff going on in Colombia. Chile, as well as those are probably the other two that are coming up. But Mexico, all by itself, is about the same size as Brazil as a market.
Interesting. Okay. And then you mentioned China, and I guess there's probably a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt for a lot of American entrepreneurs about China. But it's probably the number 2 market for Apple these days. I'm not sure if that's correct, but
it probably is. I mean, Apple does extraordinarily well there. The reason why we jumped in wasn't because we saw it as a huge market, though. I mean, the old thing they've been talking about for the last 30 years is, hey, if you could just get $1 from 1.5 billion Chinese, then life would be pretty good. And that's really the wrong way to look at the market. I mean, what we saw there is it's a very separate ecosystem because of the barriers to get into the country, but also the barriers to get out. But it's extremely vibrant. The social media scene there is like nothing we see over here. The level of innovation and pace is just crazy. They do laps around what we do here on the social media side. And we felt that that is such a crucible of innovation. It's such an intensely competitive, interesting place. We couldn't be the best product in the world without being there and learning from that and learning how to take those insights and bring them outside. And so we made a big bet on doing that. We actually host a separate service in China. It's not Evernote, it's Yinchan Biji, which no Chinese person will ever understand because my tonal accent is terrible. But we have a Chinese name for Evernote and for all of our apps. We're actually hosted in data centers in Beijing. It is the same software. We actually literally press the button every Wednesday night to do a software release, and one stream ends up in China and one ends up in data centers here. But after that, there are 2 separate services. Might as well be like Yahoo and Google. There's no connection between them.
So you guys were initially sort of launched on the mobile platform. You said you've also been deploying on web.
Well, first was actually desktop.
Okay.
Before iPhone, we were Mac and PC.
Sure.
and Windows something, whatever, something that people forgot about a long time ago that was on mobile. Yeah.
Still a lot of audience there too.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that you guys are sort of trying to be everywhere or expect to be everywhere. So what do you see as kind of next generation platforms that might be relevant there? Are you guys, in a car-based platform? Are you in a living room, gaming room, sort of TV platform as well? Or is it more business productivity environment?
I mean, so it's hard to predict from the device perspective. We kind of figure we have to be everywhere. And so we talked to Samsung guys because they make something of everything. And they actually put us on a refrigerator and showed it at CES. And people got excited about this and thought, hey, this is really cool. So sometimes you don't know. But another thing that came out of that is Samsung actually did an Android camera. And so it is a point-and-shoot camera, but it's also an Android device, and it runs applications, and it's actually pretty cool. It really makes having a point-and-shoot camera kind of makes sense.
Got it. Open to questions from the audience too, if you guys want to chime in. Yes, one from right there.
So you've been talking a lot about platforms. I mean, I understand where Evernote is now.
Yeah.
We're like a startup. If you went back to 2008, you were focused, you have apps running on platforms, obviously iPhone, Android, must-haves. What would your guidance be on developing for Windows, developing for BlackBerry?
So question about what's platform priorities for a startup getting started today?
Well, I would say, I would turn that around and say, pick a platform and do something really great and native and awesome for that platform that feels like it belongs there. The cross-platform stuff and the idea of write once and run everywhere in the device world is just complete BS. Maybe the world will be there someday, but it's just not at all there today. And you can't really win without building a great native experience that feels like the manufacturer, it belongs on their platform. So I think there's opportunities to win on a lot of different platforms, but pick one and make it really awesome.
And so you'd mentioned iOS and Apple being musts, and also picked Windows as a place that you guys are looking at as well.
Yeah, so when Windows on the desktop is hugely important. Most of our users actually use us in a business environment as well. It's kind of this tool that follows you everywhere. You need your second brain at work as well as at home, it turns out. You can't just leave it on the shelf at home. And so being on the Windows platform and having a great experience there is also super critical for us. The Windows Phone, I think, they're doing a lot of interesting stuff. That's coming up for us. The numbers are trending in the right direction. It's still a low base, but that is a platform we're also supporting. But in terms of numbers, the desktop Windows is the big one.
I wanted to ask one question maybe. I think in the last year or so, starting back 2 or 3 years ago, there was an incredible push from the investment community to start being mobile first. And then I sort of feel like maybe in the last year or so, there was a rethink on that logic. A lot of people found that doing mobile distribution was hard. Mobile monetization maybe also hard in certain platforms.
Yeah.
And a lot of people now kind of going back to enterprise software being sexy again and sort of leaving the mobile universe. Do you think that's the right call or not? And do you feel that there's still challenges in distribution and monetization on mobile?
So I mean, we're definitely going into the business world ourselves, mainly because we're already there with individual users of Evernote, and so we're coming in with a business product that the businesses can buy officially, because that's where our users are. But on the mobile side, I never really understood the themes and trends that investors pursue. It's like, oh, we hate mobile. It's mobile first. Oh, I don't know if we like mobile anymore. It turns out. The thing that's to understand about mobile is all the stuff that the lady from SlideShare talked about with SEO and all these other growth techniques. They don't really work on mobile. But what does work is app stores. And all you need to do is have the very best product in the world by a fair margin in what you do. And if you can do that, life is good. And if you can't do that, you don't belong in the mobile apps business. Go try some viral something.
Well, I mean, I want to challenge you a little bit. So I think to summarize that, what you're saying is if you're not in the top 10, app categories on that app store, you're going to have a tough time getting any type of distribution and visibility. So like your choice to be early on the iOS platform 3 years ago probably ended up being a great one. You were maybe one of a smaller number of productivity utility apps that were available on that platform. And so getting in that top 10 at that time might have been a lot easier than someone trying to do that now.
That's true, but it's person-to-person recommendation and editorial kind of recommendations are what drives mobile apps, and what drives those recommendations is having the best product. So it is a geek meritocracy in that sense.
I might plug a few of our own companies like maybe Vungle and Searchman for helping with that mobile distribution challenge.
As long as they're the best in the world at what they do, then they're going to succeed.
Well, they help other people get better visibility and distribution. But I do think that's an important challenge in figuring out, like, your point about being early on new platforms, I think, is relevant. But you probably can't afford to ignore large platforms, and trying to get visibility on those, I think, is where it is tough for startups going off. We're out of time. I'll take one more question if you guys are absolutely awesome. Both you two had your hands up. Stand up right now. Both you two. Throw down. Rock, paper, scissors, go. All right. You better be awesome.
To have an enterprise product, and since the theme today is how to monetize that, can you speak a little bit about the main strategies you're going to pursue there? Is it going to be more along the growth hacking or the traditional sales or the software sales itself?
We have tens of millions of individual users who already use Evernote every day at work, as an unofficial, unsanctioned second brain that's sitting there on their desk while they're doing their work. And so we're essentially following our users into that environment. And really what we're doing differently is, we're taking a lot of the approach. We've been inspired a lot by what we've seen Atlassian doing. And we're following a lot of that same kind of approach. But we're also taking very much a bottoms-up approach. Even when we sell to the enterprise, we don't go to the CIO and say, what's your checklist of features, and then check them all off and then go feed it back to them. We try to build a really great user experience for, what makes sense for you to use Evernote at work with your colleagues at work, and focus on that. We have to do some stuff to keep the IT guys happy, and that's important, but the center of it is really delivering a great user experience for you at work.
So who makes the purchase decision? That it's like a team manager, a small sub-team in a company?
Yeah, most of the time in smaller companies, it's just the principal of the company or one of the senior people. So companies below 1,000 or so don't have much of a decision-making process. Once you get to larger companies, for us, it's usually occurring in small teams. We're not doing like big enterprise-wide deployments. It's mostly team level.
Thanks for the great question. We're going to wrap up, but I'd like to say thank you to Ken for giving us a little bit of insight into his second brain.
All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks.